لا إله إلا الله
الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته. اللهم آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم بك نحيا وبك نموت وإليك المصير. رضينا بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم.
This azan is sponsored by UK Islamic Mission, serving humanity since 1962.
Broadcasting 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. This is Salam Radio.
Yes, it is. It is Salam Radio 106.2 FM. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome and good evening to all of our listeners. Peterborough and beyond on the Peterborough's only community Muslim radio station, Salam Radio 106.2 FM. Would you know we are Twitter Live, YouTube Live, we are Facebook Live, and I am so excited. This is why I'm catching my words a little bit. I'm so excited because I've got such a wonderful guest on my show that I'm going to be shortly introducing you to. But I'd like to see how you all survived Storm Dennis, and I've seen lots of memes that have been going about talking about the fact that this storm is a man and that we shouldn't be too frightened. And I hope that you haven't been out in the blustery wind. I know it's half term for the children, and I hope you're all enjoying yourselves at home. Now, I know that this week I always choose special shout outs on my show, and this week I'm going to nominate two people to give a shout out to. One is a young girl called Zulekha, whose mum, Anila, was recently nominated to have a free meal at Ibrahimi's. And Zulekha's a very hard-working young girl that her mum should be absolutely proud of, and Peterborough should be proud of, because she looks after her mum, she takes care of everything, and she deserves a shout out on the show. So here you are, Zulekha. Here's a shout out on the Body, Health and Mind show from Doctor Shabina. And the second young girl I would really like to give a shout out to is to Halima Hussain, who is currently at Adam Brooks Hospital, and she's poorly, but I want Halima to know how proud we all are of her strength. She's an incredible young girl with an incredible resilience and strength, and I want her to know that I'm dedicating today's show to her as well. So we're all raring for you, Halima. We hope you get well soon. I hope you come back to your family very soon, and hopefully Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you shifa. Now, without further ado, I do want you to participate on my show, wherever you are, whatever corner of Peterborough you're in. If you're listening to us on Facebook as well, just participate in this show. It's really worth it. And it's going to be such a fabulous topic. You can text and WhatsApp us on 07745 278 978, or you can ring us in on the studio on 01733 602 133, which is the Peterborough code. And other than that, you can comment underneath the Facebook Live video, which I know you will, because you always do end up saying something or the other, which has always been positive. In the history of Body, Health and Mind show, we've always had positive comments. But what I'd like to do is introduce you to my fabulous guest, and it's very rare that I'm able to get guests into the studio, and the reason why I feel so lucky today is this guest of mine happens to live within Peterborough. She is our very own Faiza Rehman, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about her, because Faiza sent me this wonderful introduction about herself, and I wanted to say it in her words so that you know a little bit about her. So what she says of herself is that I was born and raised in Peterborough in a Pakistani family. I'm one of 7 siblings and was raised by my first generation hardworking and affectionate parents. And this is what I want to say in her words, because these words mean so much. A direct result of my upbringing was meant that as a family unit, we are extremely close to one another. I'm married to my husband, Zubair, who I met at school. We have 2 beautiful young children, Heather and Hayat. I work as a midwife and began my training into becoming a midwife in 2008. I studied in Sheffield Hallam University and trained for 3 years before qualifying in 2011. I worked for a few years in Northampton after qualifying and then decided to work locally in Peterborough to be closer to my growing family. And I believe there is a great amount of satisfaction caring for people from within my community. As a human, I care deeply about maternity care. Midwifery care has a long-lasting impact on mothers and their families, and therefore is integral to the well-being of our society and our future generations. Over time, I have gained in my confidence and become even more dedicated to the aspect of birth. I am passionate in providing women and their families with holistic one-to-one midwifery care, as well as safeguarding my passion in the physiology of pregnancy, birth, and the post-birth period. A big role that we have as midwives is to provide mothers with education and information throughout their pregnancies in order for them to navigate their care. I find it amazing how with each stage of the process I am reminded it is not only about making babies, it is about making mothers. Wow. Faiza Rehman, Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
And welcome to the show. Do you know, I could not introduce that because it was so heartfelt. It came from the heart, didn't it?
That is exactly where it came from.
And with my exchanges with you, you've always been like this, though.
Yeah,
you always have.
I think with midwifery, anyone who does know me knows that I'm very passionate about it. I love everything to do with midwifery. It's who I am. And I'm okay with that. I think it's a good thing to want to be passionate about. You get to meet so many people, so many families, and you get to be part of a time in someone's life where they will never forget you.
Yes.
And you'll never probably forget them either, which is lovely.
Yes, and first of all, I can't fault the midwives that I had throughout my children's births. I've got 4 children. We have 4 children. They're not just mine, but we have 4 children, my husband and I. And I think that it's one of the most life-changing physical experiences that a woman can go through.
Yeah.
And to this date, all my midwives, the name of my first midwife was Grace, and then we had Alison, and then we had Margaret, and last but not least, we had Natalie.
Okay.
So I remember all their names. And the reason why I remember all their names is because I send them a Christmas card every year.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And I think it's important to do that. And up until a certain age, I would send pictures of the babies. And now they've grown up and become a little bit ugly. So I can't do that anymore. They've just reached that age. But the reason why I do that is I want them to remember that I never will forget them.
You know, you don't. I think, birth impacts us in ways that we can't always explain. And I was always aware of this, but when I became a mother myself, that was really highlighted to me. How I gave birth directly affected the way I felt as a mother and how I then felt I could nurture my children. And therefore it's really important. It's not just the physical act of giving birth. It totally affects your psychology and the way that you feel and see yourself and the way that you feel within your relationship. It changes every aspect of you. And I was reading around the time that I gave birth to my son in 2016, a book talking about how within our brains as mothers, we have loads of different neurons, but there's actually a door that opens once we become pregnant and give birth. And this door's been there the whole time in our female brain, apparently. But once it's opened after having children, you can never shut it again.
Wow.
Which makes sense. So it's that part of your maternal parenting that opens up, you know, those small fears you have, those anxieties you have. Are you doing everything okay? Is this normal? Am I supposed to feel so overprotective about my child? Is my child eating enough? Basic little things that mothers concern themselves with on a daily basis about their children. So it's really important, I think, really important. And on top of that, it's really important for fathers as well. Have to mention them.
Yes.
Really important for them as well, particularly if they're part of the birth and the pregnancy. Your relationship, I think, if you both go through the journey in a positive kind of way, can grow even more, and you can just support each other and always think that we have this thing that connects us.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is a really wonderful aspect that you've highlighted, because there's not much conversation around fathers, especially within ethnic minorities, isn't there?
Absolutely, particularly within ethnic minority communities. Birth still is perceived to be a very female-dominant kind of aspect of our lives, and you'll see quite commonly within black and minority ethnic communities, mothers are kind of dropped off in signs of labour or to an appointment, and the fathers will be like, okay, we'll come back later, just call us when you're ready to be picked up. But I think it's important that dads are part of the birth, because birth directly actually affects fathers' physiology. So men's testosterone actually drops when they are in a birthing room with their partner and see their partner give birth to their baby, which is amazing. And it makes so much sense, because obviously if their testosterone drops, mothers are very tired, constantly feeding their babies. Nobody's really thinking about making more babies. Therefore, if their testosterone is low, nobody is really thinking about making more babies. So it's probably beneficial to the mum to have the partners close by.
Yes, that's right. And it's really important that you stress this aspect, because part of doing these shows is talking about the untalked or unspoken aspects of health around our communities especially. And with childbirth, I think there's a lot of perception to protect from view that whole area, and you do become more exposed during the whole childbirth process.
Yes.
And it's funny that you actually say that their testosterone levels drop, the men, because I can remember having my husband with all 4 of the children. In fact, our 3rd was delivered by him. Did you know?
Lovely.
Which was lovely.
Yeah.
He didn't know how to cut the cord, so we had to have the midwife to come in to do that, but he was there.
Yeah.
And with the first experience, because yes, there is considerably a lot more pain, there is considerably a lot more emotion involved, because it's a first time process.
Absolutely, yeah.
And to come away, I did inherently feel that there was a lot more sensitivity towards being tolerant of or supportive of my recovery process.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's so important too.
So important. I think years ago, we used to have very good community setups when it came to having support for mothers. So we generally lived in joint families. You always had your neighbours close by. Somebody would give you food or help you clean your house. And as we have changed as a society and we are not as close-knit as we used to be, modern mothers of my generation really struggle with that aspect of becoming a mother, particularly with their first child. Things like expecting themselves to bounce back after birth, things like expecting their body to look a certain way after birth, having time frames in their mind thinking by X amount of weeks I should be back to normal. But we need to be really mindful of the fact that when we become pregnant, we take near enough a year to grow our babies, then birth our babies. It's not something that just bounces back within a couple of weeks. It takes months, actually. So yes, by 6 to 8 weeks after giving birth, regardless of how you give birth, your physical body will probably go back to something close to what was normal before, and never probably fully like it was before. And that's okay. That's part of childbirth. But the emotional aspect and the psychological aspect definitely takes a lot longer to go back to a new version of yourself as opposed to the same person you were, because you're not the same person you were once you've had a child.
No, you're absolutely right. And my next question to you is, what actually spurred you on or developed your interest in this field? I mean, talking to you as a human being, I just think that you were born to be a midwife and looking after and nurturing mummies and babies and the family, because you have such empathetic and compassionate streaks coming out of you.
Thank you.
That it seems as if you were destined to do this. And I mean, it's amazing. But what actually developed your interest in this?
I think it was a couple of things. So caring for people, I was naturally kind of drawn to. I'm one of 7 siblings.
Yes.
And I found that I could kind of go between being the eldest and joining in with the middle kind of clan of my siblings.
Yeah.
But being part of the eldest kind of makes you a little bit more caring.
Yeah.
But I think my mum had a big hand in this. I always knew I wanted to go into healthcare. I didn't know which part of healthcare. I considered nursing for a long time. But when I done some experience on the oncology ward, I was kind of a little bit... Not really the side of life I wanted to be on.
Yeah.
I found that my energy couldn't cope with people dying all the time. I like being around life and seeing that side of things. So midwifery felt like the next sensible option. And then my mum actually used to speak a lot about her births. So my mum's had 7 births, given birth 7 times. And my brother was born back home in a village in Pakistan. And she always talked about how she was supported. She had loads of female aunties, mother-in-law, mother around supporting her, making sure she was eating, she was moving, she was resting when she could. They were doing very basic things like massage that supported her through parts of her labour. And then the after bit, the care was fantastic. Where she got that time to get to know her baby. She didn't have to focus on any of the housework and she could just focus on him. And it's very much what midwifery is about, supporting mothers become the mother to the best potential that they can. And in contrast, when she then gave birth to the rest of her children, so the 6 daughters, we were all born in the UK. And when she first migrated over, couldn't speak very much English. And that's something that always kind of stuck with me. My mum going through a maternity system where it's such a vulnerable time in your life, but then not to be able to actually understand what your caregivers are talking about.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of stuck in my mind. That with the fact that we then used to go to Pakistan a lot. And I remember probably around about the time I was doing my GCSEs, going to a city where there was just loads of people begging, and knowing that lots of my family back home pay for education. It made me really think I need to appreciate that we get a free education in the UK. Why would I waste this amazing opportunity and not try to do something with it? So yeah, it was my mum, I would say, has played a big part in it, maybe unknowingly, but just listening to her stories about her birth really made me think, okay, I want to go into this. And knowing how lonely people from the minority communities could feel if they can't communicate with someone, how lonely they must have felt. I always remember promising to myself, if I ever had a Pakistani lady come through the door who spoke no English and I could communicate with her in our mother tongue, I would make sure that she leaves feeling really happy with everything that's happened.
Oh, that's lovely. That is so lovely. I wish you were my midwife as well.
We would have had so much fun.
It would have been lovely.
You can always consider more children. I'm always in the job.
I would never rule it out. I love children. I have 4 and I always say I'd love a big family, and now I'm inspired because you're one of 7. But that must be wonderful on Eids and on
it's amazing. You know, my siblings are the nicest people in the world. My parents have done really well, actually, and they should be given credit for this. They migrated over from Pakistan, were first generation, had to integrate into this totally foreign world, and then they raised their children. And they really did, in many ways, allow us to be who we are. And that didn't come without its challenges. Naturally, in parenting children and child relationships, there's always those dynamics that you have to work through. But, you know, they're really good. My parents are lovely. They were always very affectionate. And that's one thing about my dad. He was always very hardworking, but he was always very affectionate, particularly to his daughters. Which, when you're a man raised in the 70s and 80s, it wasn't really common that you'd sit there and you cuddle your daughters and you kiss your daughters. But my dad was never shy about it.
Oh, that's lovely.
So I think, you know, that confidence he gave us in ourselves, because you know, your parents can directly make or break you as a child.
Yes, that is so right. And actually, if uncle who's Faiza's dad, is listening, I officially nominate you as Dad of the Year from the Body Health and Mind Show on Salam
Please
Radio.
do so, yeah.
So, yes.
He deserves it.
Yeah,
He
so
deserves
here's
it.
your shout out, in fact. You are nominated as Salam Radio's Dad of the Year, officially.
That's to
So-
Habib Rahman.
Oh,
Shout
Uncle
out to
Habib
you.
Rehman, there you go. So yes, you've been officially named as Salam Radio's Dad of the Year. And actually you should be proud because you have brought up such a fine young lady in front of you who's making me incredibly emotional and soppy. I can't wait for the break to come off so I can shed a few tears. But it's wonderful because I can see all of that flowing into your work ethic, the way that you present and execute yourself with patience, because this is how you are. This is
Family's so
great.
important, isn't it, to everybody? And when you care for someone in times where they're vulnerable, and the type of people that us to come across in our jobs, they are going through very, very vulnerable times in their life. I just want to know that if my sibling was to go through that, or somebody I truly loved, that they would care for them exactly how I would.
Yes.
And I would go to many places to make sure my loved ones are safe and secure.
Yes, and how, what a beautiful thought that is.
Yeah.
And it's funny, but as medical students as well, and I'll share this story with you, we had to do a rotation at the OBS ward, definitely.
Obs and gynae, yeah.
And we had to attend births. And I was so impressed and taken by what we learned from the midwives there. And I can remember that a lady was giving birth and the midwife said to me, right, I'm going to teach you how we actually find where the head is and if it's crowning, etc. So I said, okay. And she did this examination and she said, right, yeah, oh, look, the head's here, just feel it. And I looked at her and I said, no way. And she grabbed my hand and she said, just feel the head.
Yeah.
And it was so incredible. And the moment I felt that child's head, that I grew in that 1 to 2 seconds. And I thought, my goodness, this is real. And these women and men are
absolutely.
angels who can help bring women, help them bring to life this child that's just going to be born. And it's a very emotional moment, that first cry that you hear and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Those first few moments are really incredible. And I think they seeing people give birth reminds you on a very daily basis how amazing the human creation is. Whoever created us has really thought this through down to a T, and it makes full sense why what happens, the way it happens. But you were saying about the midwives, being with the mothers. The word midwife actually means with woman.
Yes.
And that is exactly what our role is. We are with the mothers throughout the whole stages of their pregnancy, their birth and the after period. And when done really well, it improves mum's health outcomes.
Yes.
And I've got to shout out and say that actually in the UK, although we try extremely hard, we are really short of midwives, which our government needs to look at as opposed to us. But it's really important that we have more midwives, just like any other healthcare professionals, because we directly impact mums' well-beings and their babies.
That's right. And it's very important, that point you've made. The reason why I say that is that you've already highlighted that it's extremely vulnerable time for a woman going through pregnancy, especially those troubled pregnancies as well.
Absolutely.
And then going into a situation whereby she's in a lot of pain if she's birthing naturally. And if you have a very short staffed unit, it can add to the pressures of how you operate efficiently as well, because you could be looking after 2 or 3 women at the same time.
Oh, 100%. I mean, one thing that has definitely changed in the UK with birth, which is a very positive change, is that we have to provide one-to-one care to women in labour. So I would say there are very senior midwives still around, probably who practice in the 60s, 70s, 80s, who will talk about the times when, we just left the mothers and we have to go in and quickly pop into one and then the second and then the third. But over time, we've learnt from that type of practice and we've developed ourselves, and we've really began to understand what women need in labour. And safety and security is a huge, huge thing women need. And part of that is making sure that somebody's close by to them. A lot of women just want someone close by to them, keeping an eye on what's happening. Even though they're going through birth and they're probably not paying that much attention to what's happening, they want someone close to them. And I think that leads me on to a really important point, which is continuity of care. So women who have the same midwife caring for them throughout the antenatal period, birth and the postnatal period, you are able to build a trusting relationship amongst each other. So it benefits the mother and the midwife. For the midwife, you can assess who this person is and what their thoughts are and what their feelings are. And for the mothers, they can openly tell you what they're thinking, as opposed to a very traditional kind of setting where you'd see lots of different midwives. So the government has actually put an initiative through saying that we need to start providing more continuity of care for mothers. And I'm going to read out some stats because they're really, really interesting.
Please do, yes.
So they found from like a Cochrane review that was only done about 2 years ago, I think, that mothers who had continuity of care, so being seen by a very small group of midwives, so between 1 to 2 midwives, as opposed to lots of different ones, they had a 16% less chance of losing their baby.
Wow.
They had a 19% chance of being less likely to lose a baby before 24 weeks.
Okay.
And they had a 24% chance less likely to go into preterm birth.
Wow.
In a world where medical complexities are rising, we are working with people who are more obese, women who are conceiving children later in age, women who are conceiving children with IVF, women with more complex health needs. That is a significant number of people where we could avoid poor outcomes for their babies. It is that important that midwives take care.
Yes.
And they are able to take care of that person throughout their pregnancy and build that important relationship. I think the thing that it does for mothers is mothers can openly discuss their fears and their anxieties. And there are a lot of fears and anxieties that mothers kind of harbour in pregnancy, and it's important that when they can speak to their midwife, that they're given evidence-based information and guidance in their pregnancy to make decisions that they feel comfortable with.
Sure.
Sure. And then that ultimately will lead on to them having even better outcomes.
Which has been so eloquently put. So we've got the evidence to back it up, and in the next 30 seconds we're approaching a break. I'm really happy that you've put these statistics forward, simply because of the fact that these are the outcomes that can be communicated to those leaders in healthcare.
Absolutely.
To not really so much as demand, but actually execute a type of work ethic by saying that they need this workforce in place to deliver the best possible outcomes for care. But what we will do is, hopefully after the break, we will join you again to talk about your work.
Yes.
Join us after the break.
Stay tuned to Salam Radio after this short ad break.
Do you have a family member studying for GCSEs? Maybe they need support in maths and science to obtain the best grades possible. Try Intuition Peterborough. Friendly tutors with over 15 years of teaching experience and up-to-date knowledge of the curriculum and exam requirements. Based in City College, we are easy to locate with competitive prices. Find us on Facebook, Intuition Peterborough. Call 07588 084 249 or email intuitionpeterborough@hotmail.com.
Had a car accident or an accident at work? Accident specialists are experts in no-win, no-fee accident claims. Leave the hassle to us. Our multilingual settlement experts will manage the entire claims process on your behalf, with nothing to pay up front. We provide services such as credit hire, taxi vehicles, recovery, storage and much more. For full details on our range of services and a free consultation, call us on 01733 555 774 or visit our office at 249 Lincoln Road opposite the NatWest Bank. Accident specialists. Start your successful claim today.
और दोस्त
मुस्ताकियां परेशान है
जरा कर है ना सारा सौदा मुक्या वा मुल्का विच पैसे भेजने
हूं नहीं मार फूड वाले की फोन खड़का ते फ्री लोकल डिलीवरी कार मंगवा
आला ता उत्थे क्या स्पेशल आ
उन्हां की लबाई हाइजीन च ग्रेड 5 चीजें चंगियां मियारी ते सस्तियां ते नाले ऑफरां ही ऑफरां
और क्या
ताजा गोश्त ताजी सब्जियां ते फ्रूट आटा चावल दालां मसाले ते जूस सारे बिल जमा करने गैस ते इलेक्ट्रिक ने टॉप अप भी करने पाकिस्तान पैसे बिल्कुल फ्री भेजने मतलब के एक चिड़ी ने दूध छड़ी ते हर शय लबनी
जने ने आप उतरा
Amar Food Store and Halal Meat 613B Lincoln Road Peterborough telephone 01733 687374
Mumtaz Leeds presents the Mumtaz Grand Tal. Feed up to 6 people for only £59.95. This incredible sharing platter includes Balochi Saji whole chicken, chapel kebab, kabli pilau rice, Balochi lamb karahi, chicken karahi, keema karahi, and much more. It's Mumtaz quality, now even more affordable. Find us at Mackenzie House, Chadwick Street, Leeds. Book your table via WhatsApp on 07399 786 786.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من تمسك بسنتي عند فساد أمتي فله أجر 100 شهيد. That whoever holds tight my sunnah when there is corruption in my ummah, for him will be the reward of 100 martyrs.
اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أغلق والخاتم لما سبق ناصر الحق بالحق والهادي إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله حق قدره ومقدار العظيم.
King James is role model, he say he LeBron. I wanna be like still alive, lay salam. They say I shouldn't rhyme, they say it's a rhyme. Show me that exact line up in the Quran. Don't that sound like a rhyme when you hear the Adhan? Don't that sound like a rhyme when you hear the Quran? I do magic with the music, God gave me the wine. Wouldn't you drink from the water if he gave you a pond? The
Broadcasting 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. This is Salam Radio.
Right. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. This is a wonderful show that we've got with the absolutely beautiful hearted, and I say that because her soul is just echoing here in the station, with Faiza Rehman, who's a midwife here at our very own Peterborough City Hospital. And before the break, we were talking about all the emotional aspects of how women should be made to feel in birth. And you've given us some incredible statistics, Faiza, about having as few midwives as possible to share in that pregnant woman's journey, and how the workforce is quite cut back at the moment. Now, could you tell us a little bit about the work you do and describe a typical sort of uncomplicated journey of a woman who's about to go into labour when she enters those doors of PCH?
Yeah, of course. So birth definitely has a pattern. When you watch it enough, you realise we have variations of normal, but birth generally does have a pattern. So often what happens is, as midwives, women come under our remit of practice when they go into labour after 37 weeks, so they're classified as a term pregnancy. Right. We care for them under that gestation as well, but with the input of obstetricians, which is very important. They're very good when we need them. So generally after 37 weeks, if you have got a single term pregnancy, so one baby in your tummy, what women will notice is they may start to get period type of cramps. Some women's waters break before labour starts. That happens to about roughly 10% of women. Okay. If your waters break and they're clear, generally we wait till labour wants to start. We give time till your body starts wanting to contract. You may or may not notice funny kind of discharge coming out of your vagina. So it can be anywhere from clear to a colour red or quite bright red, but it looks very snotty in consistency. And then what you notice is this intensity of the period feeling in your tummy increases. So it comes and goes. There's initially not much of a pattern to it. And as time goes on, you carry on eating, drinking, moving around, staying at home for as long as possible, this feeling will increase until they come in much more regularly. So the time that they come to us is when they start thinking they're coming every kind of 2 or 3 minutes apart.
Right.
Or if they feel like something's really changed and they have any concerns, they can call us. So often what will happen is they'll come into us, and ideally, you know, the first steps into a hospital are very important. You want to build that environment, that safety cocoon kind of feeling. They come in and they feel safe with us. So they come in, you'll do an initial assessment on them, figure out how long they've been contracting for, where they're feeling them, because labour generally has a pattern. In active labour, the thing that changes is your contractions are coming regular. They are all long, they are all strong. They'll be coming roughly every 2 or 3 minutes apart. They'll last up to 50 to 70 seconds, and then you generally have a break, and then they come again. They keep doing this until we have our baby. So we're observing mums. Clinically, we look at what their observations are, and we listen into how the baby's kind of coping with the birth. If they are contracting very regularly or showing other signs of labour, so through their body language, women change in labour. Women who are in active labour often become a lot more withdrawn from what's happening. They can't really mumble or talk through contractions. They often start mooing a lot more, sounding very animalistic. But when the contractions go, they're back to how they normally behave.
Yes, that's right.
And it's like nothing even really happened.
Yeah.
Within that time, their waters may or may not break. So we'll assess them, see what's happening. We can check what their cervix is doing, which adds on to our clinical picture. So active labour in the UK is classified as 4 centimetres dilated, plus regular uterine activity, so regular contractions. But what's really important about the neck of the womb, it's like any orifice in our body. It opens and it has the ability to close as well. So when we have not had children before, it does this more systematically. It's usually a thick tube, I'd say about 2 or 3 centimetres long, and it points towards our bums where we poo from. And what happens is as labour advances, it softens, it moves forward, and this tube becomes flat. This is really important when it's your first baby, because until this part's not done, it doesn't really matter how dilated you are, because this work has to have been done. This is the groundwork that early labour does. Then the cervix starts to open. And generally, you want all of that softening, that moving forward, and that flattening, as well as the 4 centimetres. That's for a first-time mum. For someone who's had a baby already, she can do that as quick as she likes, as slow as she likes. So, for example, I remember taking care of a Bengali lady. I think it was her 5th baby. I'm very good at remembering faces. I'm not very good at always remembering names. And I had just qualified, so I was very new after becoming a midwife. And after doing my initial assessment, she didn't understand much English, but she could speak Urdu relatively well, so she understood what was happening.
Yeah.
But in reality, she was leading it. I just had to watch her.
Okay.
I was just trying very hard not to miss anything because I was new and I was very nervous about it all. And I remember I assessed her and I still had my gloves on, and it was something like 1:15 on the clock, and I thought her cervix is 2 centimetres, it's far back, but she's looks like she's pushing. She sounds like she's pushing, and she's wetting herself. So a lot of involuntary actions happening in that region. And whilst keeping my gloves on my hand, I often pray to Allah a lot. Just a little prayer to myself, just to make sure, okay, God, inshallah, this is going to be okay for everybody. But that's just the way I do things. It's not relevant, but it's something I do.
It's amazing, though.
And I had my gloves on thinking, she looks like she's about to give birth, but her cervix is so far back. And actually, without even taking my gloves on, her baby's head was then sat at the bottom of her vagina. But she had had children before. So vaginal examinations, the point to take is they're very good. They give us a good insight into things, but they are not very good predictors. They can't tell me what's going to happen in the next 2-3 hours or the next couple of days. So first time mums, the general rule is if everything's clinically well, accept it's going to take time generally. There are some people who, you know, jump and do very quick births and labours, but generally with your first baby, I wouldn't really put my money on it. Once you've had children before, that pathway's been made. So then you will go on to giving birth more effectively. So generally when they come in, we assess them, try to build up a bit of a rapport, talk to them about what's happening, ask them what's happening, assess them, let them know what's happening with their cervix, and if they're in active labour, they'll then stay. If they're a low-risk pregnancy, so they have less chances of complications, they'll by default usually go to the midwifery-led birthing unit, which is staffed by just midwives. There's no doctors on this unit. And then if they have more complex needs, we'll then divert them to delivery suite, which in Peterborough is actually right next door to each other.
Yeah.
And they'll have a plan put in place with the doctors and the midwives together, or anaesthetists or paediatricians, depending on who they need, and then we'll care for them in labour.
Okay.
But the day, generally, you expect it to be long, and you expect there to be a lot of mooing like a cow.
Okay.
I would say.
Oh dear. Okay.
Which makes us really happy as midwives.
I was just peeking at Sister Michelle just over there. We're giving each other these looks because we sort of know. We know
did that.
where you're coming from. We hear you.
Yeah.
But this is, it's fascinating. I've just got a question from a sister who's come up on my page. She doesn't want to be known. She said, she's asking, is it generally she's saying, is it generally the thought process that if you remain active throughout your pregnancy, you're going to have a shorter labour?
There is some suggestion that this could be the case. Being active definitely helps. So years ago, as a society, we used to be far more active than we are now. One thing that we are noticing with modern mums is our babies are more likely to get into a position called occipito-posterior, which means back to back.
Yeah.
So their back leans against our back, which means a bigger diameter of their head has to go into our pelvis, and they have to rotate all the way around instead of taking a bit of a shortcut, which makes our life, I guess, a little bit easier. Mothers going through birth don't even really notice that they're rotating. It's something all happening internally without much control.
Yes, it's very painful. That's all we know.
Yes, at the time, that's exactly how we feel. But yes, being active can mean our babies get into a much better position. Another really important thing is years ago, we used to squat a lot more. Everything was done more in a squatting position,
yes,
going to the
right.
toilet, going for a wee or a poo, generally sweeping the floor. So you find that position is really good to get the baby lower, and also you're upright, therefore their back leans towards the front of your tummy. So yes, being active definitely helps.
Okay, that's brilliant. I've got another question. Actually, it's from a brother. Again, he says he wants to remain anonymous, so he has asked, why is the delivery suite at Peterborough City Hospital so far away from the car park?
So my midwife always says walking is fantastic. It helps labour progress. So, the further, the better. Unless it's your fifth baby, then really it's not going to help you being that far away.
Yes, and he's actually put in a comment. He says, well, it doesn't help us dads who are going through a nervous breakdown at the time.
I know. You know what? This is a really good point that you've highlighted. This is where we need to have better education for dads, because you know what? There's a lot of pressure put on you, particularly within the Asian community, that all of a sudden when your women start going into labour, you're going to take them to labour ward, but actually the unknown part of childbirth can put fear into many people.
That's right.
And men particularly, their fight or flight response can really kick in a lot around childbirth.
So
it's really important actually, because if you have the education to know what labour is going to be like, how it's going to unfold, you'll feel more relaxed about, actually, this is why my wife is behaving like this. And no, a baby isn't just going to fall out of her vagina, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
It takes a bit of hard graft to push babies out of our bodies.
Yes, absolutely. Well, my births have all been precipitate births, actually,
Okay,
which has been brilliant, which has been lovely, actually, I think. But the only thing that I guess that my husband is, because he's very clean, squeaky clean with everything, and he's the type that comes out on weekends and polishes his car and the sofas and everything. So the only thing I've really been worried about is on our way to the hospital, we've got to keep the car clean.
You know, when I worked in Northampton, they have a very good home birth team there. So amazing. A lot of mothers who had precipitate births there, the cultural practice was to have an assessment done at home and have a birth pack ready at home, and they would send a midwife to you by default if you thought you were going into labour, so that you could be assessed and there was a healthcare practitioner with you. So the safety of childbirth comes from having a qualified person with skills to care for you in labour. That's the safety aspect of birth.
Yeah.
Midwives are very good at assessing you, and if something changes in your pregnancy, that's when we speak to our obstetric friends. Generally, mums who choose to even have babies at home, there's always a good amount of time to get them into hospital. In the Western world, we really fear that something's going to go really dramatically wrong. Generally speaking, that's not usually the case. Pregnancy is generally a very safe part of our reproductive biology. We are supposed to give birth, and there is nothing really scary about it. So I would say that with precipitate births, it's a good one to consider, just having that safety net in place. And otherwise, if you make it to us in hospital, fantastic. But if you don't, at least you know somebody's going to come to you and assess you, and you've got people you need around you, as opposed to halfway through to us on the motorway you start giving birth, which is a really not good situation to be in.
Oh yes, and it's so important that you're giving this information out. I've got another sister, again, likes to remain anonymous, but she says that she's expecting. She says, I absolutely love the show. I'm so glad that Sister Faiza has come on board. She's actually inboxed me in my messages. I'm so glad that Sister Faiza has come on board, and I really wish that I will have her to be my midwife when I give birth, which is wonderful. What she does say is that, is it true that within ethnic minority communities, the uptake of having births at home is less as compared to the general population? I think that's the case,
I think that is definitely the case. So around the world, quite a huge amount of the human population still gives birth at home. In Western countries, however, less mothers choose to usually give birth at home. This is changing with loads of new evidence coming out. So in 2016, they done a birthplace cohort research saying that actually it's pretty safe for women to give birth at home, particularly if it's your second baby or onwards. Giving birth at home is absolutely safe for mothers and babies, so long as you have a qualified healthcare professional with you. For first-time mums, there was a very slight increased chance in morbidity, so poorer outcomes for babies. Okay. And actually, I'm going to say the number to you guys, because that can be very scary, I think, for parents. Where is it? It's just over here. So for first-time mums, it was... Where is it gone? Here we go. So for first-time mums, it was 9.3 adverse outcomes with babies being born at home compared to 5.3 if you gave birth in hospital. So there is always going to be that baseline chance of babies needing a bit more support when they come out, even with low-risk pregnancy. So low risk or high risk doesn't mean no risk or absolute risk. You can have a high-risk pregnancy with a straightforward birth and outcome. You can have a low-risk pregnancy where that's not the case. But home birth is definitely, and birth in midwifery-led units are generally seen as very safe. So in the UK, our statistics are about 2.4% of the population in the UK give birth at home. We have something like 760,000 babies born a year in the UK, so it's a very small number. But then you go somewhere like the Netherlands, where they've got very good outcomes for their mums and babies, another developed country, and they have, I think it's something like 24% of their mothers give birth at home. Up until a couple of years ago, it was actually a third of their population gave birth at home, so they were much higher than they are now. But that's changed. I'm not quite sure why. But then you have places like America, where it's one of the richest countries in the world, but everyone gives birth in hospital, and they have poorer outcomes for their mums and babies, particularly for women from the black and minority ethnic communities. There's a huge disparity between the rich and the poor, people who can afford healthcare, people who can't afford healthcare, and you're finding that there are mothers dying in childbirth related problems in America. There's a lot more intervention in America, and sometimes it's too much of anything cannot always be a good thing to be doing, if that makes sense. Absolutely. You've got to be very aware of what you're doing, very mindful of treatments that you're offering. So the ideal is we respect the physiology. The physiology is what our bodies are designed to do, and like any medicine, you only introduce the medicine if some kind of pathology arises. If something's going wrong, you then treat it to try and get the human body back to align to its closest physiological function. Birth is the same. If things are going a little bit off kilter, then we can offer treatments to bring it back. But that's not to say that it's not without side effects. Everything generally does have side effects.
Yeah, and I completely concur with you. And those are fascinating statistics, especially in the developed world as well. In Denmark, wow. I mean, they demonstrate quite a good number of statistics for women that give birth at home. I've got a question on my phone, actually, from a sister who is asking me, if I was to resort to a home birth, what is the process? I go into labour and how do I call a midwife living here in Peterborough?
Fine. I think part of wanting to have a home birth means you're preparing yourself. So a lot of pregnancy is getting information and preparing yourself. So the first thing I would say is definitely talk to your community midwife. She'll be a good person to start with. She can tell you how the process works in Peterborough. And also it makes them aware to make sure that actually this mother's considering having her baby at home. So then actually let's put things in place, a plan in place, so it's like our safety net to say, actually, if this is happening, we continue. If this isn't happening, this is when you think, okay, I'm happy to draw a line and let's get transferred in potentially if you need to. So it's all about having that safety net. The second thing is, in Peterborough, we have on Facebook a local home birth support group.
Oh.
It's fantastic. Some really amazing women are part of it. Really, really amazing mothers are part of it, from all kind of walks of life. And you can speak to them, message them. They're very good at getting back to you if you want to have any information. And they can kind of guide you through to what to do. But generally, once you've told your midwife, they put a bit of a plan in place with you. They go through birth, kind of what to expect. If you'd like any kind of equipment, for example, if you're at home and you want to consider a pool, how to kind of arrange that.
Wow.
And then they come out and they take care of you in labour, and then inshallah you have your baby, and then you just enjoy the baby moon afterwards. And if I say so myself, my personal experiences with my son, my first baby, I had home birth.
Wow.
I gave birth to him at home in my bedroom. I had my mum and my husband there.
That's amazing.
And then I had all of my sisters sat on the stairs outside,
cheering
me on.
Oh, that's
totally
lovely.
clueless to what was probably happening. So it was a real family affair. And you know what? It was so empowering. It was the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
And it made me even more amazed at the power of women. And then subsequently, my sister, who's had her 2 children, the first baby, she got transferred in for very valid clinical reasons, but a lovely positive birth both ways. And then the second baby, she gave birth to him at home, my little Yusuf. So it's a family affair, birth is, and this is the thing, we need to be putting the onus back into community. You know, you're going to go home with these children, and when we raise children, Shabina, nobody tells us this is the manual of how to do it.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And you know, we can be as safe as possible as parents. And the reality is, my children have probably bumped their head on a few doors when I'm carrying them, not by purpose, but it sometimes happens.
Yes.
And pregnancy is one of those things. You do have a chance of things medically going wrong, but it's about knowing that safety nets are put in place. And in the UK, there is no actual time than now where it's safe to have children. Here. Years ago, it was very unsafe, but we've become very good at birth now. And we've become very good at involving healthcare professionals when things are going wrong.
Yeah.
I think the bigger thing is education, though. A lot of people don't have much education into how to cope with labour. Therefore, when it starts, they get very fearful of it.
Yes.
And they believe there's a problem right from the beginning.
Yes.
So I think that's something that we need to look into.
Yes, absolutely. And it's so wonderful. I don't even want to interrupt you when you're talking because you exude such positivity. And I want to read you out some of the comments. So first of all, we have Dr. Azhar Chaudhry, a very well-known GP and a wonderful colleague here in Peterborough.
Hello.
Who said, hello, mashallah, great program. And he further adds, I think we need more midwives so that they can manage all pregnancy-related issues in the community instead of coming to the GPs in the afternoons as emergency. That used to happen in Scotland a few years ago when I trained there. Yes, he did. He trained from Dumfries and Galloway because my husband, we used to live there just south of that. I hardly saw any pregnant lady there. Midwives were the first line of contact and they used to manage them. And I have another comment over here from Sister Atiya Ahmed. Hi Faiza, really enjoying the show. Good to see you share your knowledge and experience.
Thank you, Atiya.
And Dr. Azhar Chaudhry also says, mashallah, she is so soft-spoken like her whole family as well. And I've got another comment here from Sister Shabana on my own phone. Salam sis, pray you are well. Fantastic show this evening. Just wanted to say the midwives at our hospitals are amazing and don't get enough credit. They make mums feel wonderful. And I have to say, I had such a good experience when all 3 of my kids, they all looked after me so well. A big thank you to all the midwives. And I completely second and third that.
Oh, that's
definitely
amazing. So nice to hear.
It is. It's wonderful. And listening to all of this makes me want to have another baby so that I'm just cared for by the midwives at Peterborough City Hospital.
I think the people who do the job try very hard to try to cut out the politics at work, because we all have those in the NHS. It's such a strenuous place to work. There's so many things that make our lives very difficult when we work in the NHS, and the midwives on the shop floor work really hard, and I have to give them my hats off. It's hard work, but they're very good at putting the women at the centre of it.
Yeah.
What the GP friend of yours was saying about in Scotland, actually, you know, that's actually the case in a lot of areas where your midwife is your first point of contact. I think Scotland's a little bit more rural than we are here.
It is.
Therefore, they have more structures in place to see a midwife as a first point of contact. But I know in Northampton, the first point of contact was always a midwife. So the moment you become pregnant anywhere in the UK, there is no need to go to your GP. You can go straight to your community midwife. And I think in Peterborough, it's a self-referral form, and you can probably correct me if I'm wrong with that.
Yeah, so what we do is when we see where a lady comes in and she says that she's pregnant, we always congratulate them.
Yep.
And then we advise them to make a booking appointment with a midwife, so they can do that via reception as well. And Sister Michelle has just said, I had a pool for my firstborn. The pool was bigger than my living room. That's amazing.
That's amazing. Pools are brilliant. There is actually a local company in Whittlesea, I think, where you can hire the pool.
Wow.
They come and drop it off to you, and they've got an amazing service. I cannot remember the lady's name who does it, but if you Google it, she'll come up. And I would recommend considering that. The other thing is the home birth support group in Peterborough. They allow you to borrow their pool, but you have to get your own liner and certain equipment to make sure that it's a clean environment.
Yes.
Because you can actually use the inflatable home pools up to 40 times.
Wow.
Yes.
That is amazing. And so I've always thought it's something I've been intrigued by, probably not very related, but we've only got less than probably 2 minutes left on the show. So very quickly, how long does it take to actually fill one of these pools? And then what do you do afterwards? And who does the work afterwards of emptying it? And
so in a hospital, it's
of
amazing. Their systems are far greater than people like me who have a water boiler tank system, which is absolutely rubbish. So it fills up within a hospital within about 10-15 minutes, if that. They are huge, the pools are. And cleaning them, so in some units, the midwives clean them. In Peterborough, we have some lovely domestic staff that help us clean them.
Of course.
But at home, what generally tends to happen is they have a liner and they come with a pump. The pump connects to the pipe, and then the pipe gets rid of all the water into a drain. So you just put it out the window wherever the drain is closest and just let it all go out. And then whatever's left in the liner, you kind of roll up the liner. You can put the rest down the drain, or you can just put it into your bin and it's all gone. Or actually, the midwife may take it away and clinically get rid of it. But regardless, if it's a clean pool and there's not much bodily waste in it, I think lots of parents get rid of it. But the midwives do help you clean up after a home birth.
That's amazing.
And it literally will look like nothing has happened, and it's amazing.
That's really good. So Dad doesn't have to do anything. That's great.
Yeah, although they do help out a lot. So,
that's amazing. Now, Sister Michelle, I'm going to close the show before we say goodbye to you. Is that Sister Michelle has said, I remember thinking what the scoop was for that comes with the pool. It's wonderful. So now we know, which is wonderful.
We do know.
In 30 seconds, Faiza, what is your message for Peterborough's pregnant ladies out there?
It is look at your information, get your education, know how you can cope with labour. There's loads of strategies out there that you can use. Look into hypnobirthing and get all of your information together before writing a birth plan down. And then aim to achieve that birth plan and be okay and flexible if you don't achieve everything in that birth plan. Look at the big things that you really want and work towards them. And enjoy your baby when your baby is here. This time will pass so quickly and you will miss it. And everybody says that to you. And although it's very hard whilst you're going through it, you will miss it.
Yeah.
So just prepare yourself as much as you can to know how to nurture your baby. And breastfeeding is amazing if you want to do it.
Yeah. Oh, what absolutely beautifully wise words. Thank you so much for coming. And I'm going to be calling you again because I want to talk about babies even more.
Let's do it.
So it's wonderful to have you all on board, and hopefully, inshallah, see you next week for another Body, Health and Mind show.
Stay tuned to Salam Radio after this short ad break.
Are you looking to kickstart a career